go away.
So you have everything?
I think I do.
Okay.
Should we just stop?
I think at 11, which is in a few minutes, right?
Okay.
There's people going from one of our rooms is a block away, so there's a
Right.
little bit. There's not very many people.
I'm just amazed everybody showed up. There's a lot of people here.
Yes.
Which is why I'm wondering, am I giving the right talk?
I was just
I
about
thought
to check.
the other one was way more interesting.
I was just going to check.
Okay. Then it's the wrong talk.
I think that's one of your later talks, right?
Right. So it should be this one. Now we're talking.
That's it.
You see?
It's been very good.
Something was wrong. Because that's the interesting talk. Well, the other one's
I was kind of interested in the other one too.
yeah, well, it is interesting. Maybe, what, just to get people going.
Okay.
Makes more sense now.
I think maybe just in a couple of minutes I'll be all set. Is there anything I can get you? You all set?
I'm saying.
Still room in the back. Crowd out.
Wow, cool. So hey, Larry and Rick are here, so I better not screw this one up. So, hi everybody, I'm Garu, or Garu, depending on your pronunciation. And I'm going to talk a bit about data printer. Now, the thing about data printer is that there's a common thing happening when you're writing code, which is you have this variable and you want to know what's inside, right? And so, what is in there? What does your variable hold at that particular moment in your code? It could have something like an undefined value. Maybe it has an integer. Or maybe it's a string. Then again, it could be an array reference to a string or to several strings. Or maybe it's a hash. Or maybe it's a hash pointing to an array reference that has a couple of strings on it. Or maybe it's something way more interesting and way more complicated for you to figure out. So, there's your variable. What are you going to do to see what's inside? Well, a little show of hand. Who knows data dumper? So, and now data dumper is this great tool that helps you figure out, well, yeah, I mean, I wrote data printer, so, well, data dumper is this awesome tool that helps you see, among other things, it helps you see what's inside your variable. And it's like the real standard that's the real go-to module when people want to see or to dump their variables on screen. But you see, data dumper has a feature actually, which is it's supposed to stringify your whatever data structure you have inside so that it can be compiled back into Perl. So you have like if you do this my string equals dumper of whatever variable you have, then you can just evaluate that string back into the variable. And you have your data structure back again. this is good for serialization and, to send stuff from one way to the other. Then there you have it. So the thing is, my feeling is that nobody uses this feature. At least, well, who uses the data dumper for this? There you are. I fixed it for you. So almost no one uses data dumper to actually stringify stuff and then evaluate it back into code. Most of us just want to see what's inside. We just want to see what our variables contain. So, and if you are going to stringify stuff and to serialize your variables, there are several other solutions that have been developed just for that. There's storable, you can do it in JSON, there's message pack, data dump streamer, there's also free store, bean code, and all that niche of modules to serialize stuff and evaluate it back into code. But the thing is, like I said, this is a feature that if you really want to use, then you're probably better off with some specific module just for that. Whereas if you want to just see the content of your variable, you don't have to store it on a string. You have to print it, or you have to push it to standard error and give a 1, or maybe die showing the contents of whatever variable you have. But the thing is, all of those are characteristics of human inspection. And data dumper is not meant for human inspection. That's the keyword right there. So here enters the scene data printer. Data printer is a module that I made to solve a particular problem, which is how to see the content of your variables, but optimized for human inspection. Because you don't have to, when you look at the code, you just want to see what's inside. You don't have to evaluate it back into a variable. So, in order for you to get, since you all know data dumper, in order for you to get a little grasp of what I'm talking about, here's a bit of a comparison between what you see if you print stuff with data dumper and what you get with data printer. Now, a regular data structure would get you something like this. If you try and dump a complex data structure from Perl from within data dumper, you get the var1 thing, and it's all, well, the first thing you see when you look at the code from data printer, except if you have some eyesight issues, I mean, it happens, but it's colored, because colors are good. Colors help you figure out what's inside. Like, just by glancing at the code, you see if something's right or wrong. It also, by default, carries an index to any array that you have inside your structure. So you can easily glance at a bit of the code and see exactly what's the index of it and how to get to it. And it can color differently circular references, so they stand out, and you can see if maybe you messed up, or maybe if it's supposed to be there. And the other thing that I find it really nice about it is that if you get to a regular expression inside your data structure, instead of the whole QR thing, you just get the regular expression and the modifiers separately. So you can see what's going on instead of having to decompile stuff in your head. Now, this data dumper can be even okay for a few examples. But what happens when you try to, maybe see the contents of an object? Let's say, for example, that you did digest MD5 new and you want to see what's inside. Well, if you do it with data dumper, all you get is this. You get like a bless do reference from my O equals what? And if you try it from data printer, by default, you get this. You get a colored reference saying that this is an object of the class digest MD5, it has such and such parents, such and such public methods, such and such private methods, and if you dig into its internals, they're undefined yet, at least, for this example. And if you play with it for just a short bit, you'll see that you'll be able to turn even that into something that it's even easier for you to grasp. Because if you want to see a digest MD5 thing, you're probably wondering about the digest, not about the contents of your object or anything like that. And this is also true for datetime and database objects and such. So how does Data Printer handles file handles and ties? Well, Data Dumper does something like this. You know, you have a file handle, it goes handle that, and the item just with the little slash and reference right there. But it doesn't tell you that it's tied or that it's not tied. Whereas Data Printer will give you the full picture. It'll tell you that file handle comes from your main package. It'll tell you all its POL.io features, like whether it's a file handle open with read-only mode or read and write, all the flags that you have inside. And if you have a tied variable, it'll tell you to which thing it's tied to. So get a much more thorough experience while watching your variables. So how to use it? If you're going with Dumper, first you have to pass it as a reference. Then you have to, because it just returns a string, you have to do something with it. You have to print it. And maybe you want to warn it, but then you get at line whatever, and maybe you don't want that, so just print to standard error. And Data Printer already prints to standard error by default. And it doesn't require a reference by default. You can people that don't like prototypes can just say use Data Printer, use prototypes equals 0, and they'll have to pass the reference, but they'll get more flexibility that having prototypes doesn't let them. So how do you invoke it? You just say use Data Printer, or as people have started getting used to, you just use DDP for short. And what most people have been doing is this. They have all that code that in random mill they want to do something about it, so they just use DDP p whatever variable. And then they run it and they see what's going on at that particular moment. And then they can just remove that line and be gone with it. So Data Printer is highly customizable. I mean, you can make it your own. And so, for example, you can say just use DDP and print your code. But if you want to, maybe you have legacy dumper calls or such, and you just want to, I have a lot of data dumper things, but I want to use Data Printer instead. What do I do? You just, instead of data dumper, you just say use DDP or use Data Printer, and you say alias dumper. So whenever you are calling P, there you are. Whenever you're calling P, you just call dumper, or whatever the name you pass for the alias to P. And there are all sorts of customization that you can do. I'm not going through all of them, but there are a lot, as you can see. And I'm not even going into coloring, which you obviously can also do. So even though if you see here, you see that I did it in line with loading my module. But you don't have, what if you do a lot of those and you make it your own, but you have to, every time you say use Data Dumper or Data Printer or use DDP, you just have to customize it every time. Well, you don't. You can just set a .data printer file in your home directory. And you just set it exactly as you would with your general module invocation. And you can do a lot of those things. This is just a few of them, just to showcase it. And one of the things that I want to talk about as one of the good things that Data Printer has is that thing right there called return value. You can actually, data printer by default so far, I mean, this is actually a bit of an experimentation that I'm doing. It will return, it will print in void context, but it will return if you ask it to return something. But I've seen people having, especially beginners, having some issues with it. So I'm thinking about turning into pass by default. So if you care, there's a bug on GitHub about this. There's an issue open on GitHub that you can talk about and discuss and say what's your opinion and what you think you're going to do. I'm really inclined to do this because it allows me to debug chain methods like that. You know, this is just a random object calling a few methods when in a chain mode. So let's say you want to debug or to see the contents of that object from each call, because this line is doing something terribly wrong, but you don't know where. In a regular debugging, you would have to, split it into several lines and then calling data dumper or whatever to each of them to see what's going on. Whereas if you have the return called pass, the pass mode, then it'll just pass through, and you can just shove data printer inside any place you want, and it'll dump the object at any point in that chained event sequence. So it's a nice thing. Another thing that I think it's a little cool is the filters. It's really easy to add your own filters. You just say filters, and for whatever type of variable, whether you can do the plain Perl variables like the uppercase, scalar, or all of them really, and you can do with modules. You can say like datetime. Just say, instead of dumping the whole structure, just do the YMD and show me the date, Or if you have an HTTP request object, just tell me what the URI for it is. And you can even make it an external filter with much more complex stuff, and just say external this one, and it will load the data printer filter whatever that you have installed in your system. And it already comes with a few of them. I'm going to talk about them in a bit, I think. But you can do, for example, this is the DB one. And DB can do this. If you are with data dumper and you have and you try to dump a DBI object, all you get is this. You get bless from an empty hash reference, and it says DBI, DB, whatever that means. So you're a bit lost at this point. And whereas if you have the DB plugin, the DB filter for data printer, instead you get, this is an SQLite database handle. It is currently connected, or it's not, it's disconnected. The DB name is this one. In case of SQLite, of course, it's a file. Auto commit is set to 1. There's one statement handle open and it's active. And the last statement that this handle did was that one. How's that for change? How's that for actually debugging your things? So there are several available filters like I was telling you about. Datetime is built in. DB is built in, so you don't have to worry about those. And a friend of mine did the URI, and that can do, and DB is cool, and datetime is also very cool because datetime doesn't only handle datetime objects. It also handles timepiece objects and all the other stuff that has datetime. And if you have a datetime module that you want to see it customized by this filter, just let me know and we'll add it to the filter. The same thing goes for all that other stuff. So there's even a possibility that you can approach in your own modules, that you can add automatic filters for data printer in your modules without having to require data printer at all. All you do is you provide like a private method called _data_printer. And that method, if it's available by default, and of course you as a user can make it custom, but by default, if this is available in your package, in the object that you're trying to dump, then, or to print in this case, then it'll run this instead of whatever it was supposed to run. So you can make it custom for your module, and you don't even have to add data printer as a dependency. You can just say, oh, my module is data printer aware, and I won't even have to bother writing a filter for it because it'll already be there. And you won't have to do like filter, this is something. You just add it to your package, add it to your module, and it will work. Or so I hope. Well, and so anyway, this is what you do. Then afterwards, you just use your module, and eventually you just say use the DP and print the object, and it will work. Now there are some goodies that I want to share. There's been a huge acceptance of data printer, and I'm really glad it did, and people liked it, you know. And a lot of people did several modules that work with data printer, and that whenever they have to print stuff, they use it as its underlying system instead of regular data dumper, because they really want to see the variable, not to stringify it and then stringify it back. And the other thing is that this is another goodie, that you can just do something like, if you debug a lot, you can replace the regular P from the Perl debugger to print your data structure as data printer would. You just use db pluggable and run it with the data printer config, and then whenever you're debugging your programs using the Perl debugger, you just say P whatever, and it will print it for you, which is really nice if you really do the debugger. And there are a lot of things that I wanted to work, that I still want to work with. Any of you guys that are interested, and I'll be at the hackathons over at the conference, and I really expect to deliver all of those before YAP-CNA ends. And one of them is you can just load all your external filters. You don't have to load them one by one as you have to do today. There's also since I do a lot of excess work, you know, with underlying C libraries, it's good for me that I want to add a peak attribute that lets you see all the underlying stuff inside your variable, all the stuff that Perl's doing. There's also a ref count that will tell you right next to the variable value what's the ref count of that. So maybe it helps you. And the size, how many, this was a feature request. People wanted to know how much space that variable was taking up on the program. So maybe to track like a leak or something, I don't know, but there's devel size, and I can just plug it in and also show you which variables are marked as read-only, which ones have attributes, and which attributes, you know, either methods or variables, and even the skeletons, because sometimes you don't want to see what's inside each variable. You just want to have a general outline of whatever your object or your data structure is. And you don't care about what are the values. You just want to know what's the structure like. So you just want to see the skeleton, and you just do P variable, comma, and then skeleton, arrow, fat comma, 1, and it works. Well, it will before YAP-CNA ends, hopefully. And also, there are several feature requests, and if you have any, you're more than welcome to join in and find data printer either on CPAN or MetaCPAN or even GitHub, or just give me a nudge and I'll let you guys into the code. And you can all help me, which is why I'm talking to you like that. Well, so there's a feature request to add extended colors, not just the 16 plain colors of term and ANSI colors. Also some bug fixes that I need to do. And Matt gave me a pull request of a version that can do, it has different dependencies, so you can load a data printer as a pure Perl module, which means you can fat pack it and you can just have it download, and you don't have to worry about downloading any of its dependencies. You just shove it all in and it'll work. Also profiles. Some people have been wondering about how to get custom profiles up on CPAN, like maybe something-ish like you do on Distzilla, and that you can just customize it to whatever your own preferences are without having to have your own .data printer RC file. And of course, more filters like the digester I've been telling you about, web filters for several frameworks like Catalyst or Dancer or Mojo or whatever. And even your filter, if you have a module and you're thinking like, well, usually when I use Data Dumper, I'm just interested in this or in that, and maybe I can add a filter for it, or maybe you can add a filter for it and upload it to CPAN. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys will use it. And thank you very much. Any questions? No?
A quick comment would just be the PDL result that has it built in, has a feed already. We can try to avoid the clash with that and try to make them work nicely.
Well, they can work nicely. You're talking about the debugger, right?
Well, PDL has
the PDL.
Yeah.
Well, I think so. You can always do alias and export a different name.
I suppose, yeah.
And
maybe on the PDL side we could try to detect that one or the other has been loaded first.
Absolutely. We can talk about this and you can figure something out. This will be fun. Actually, I've been thinking about doing a PDL filter.
It would be great.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, cool.
Do you handle binary data?
Not yet. It's one of the bug fixes that we're working on. You're more than welcome to join in and help.